Money changed sound after Pentecost. In Jerusalem in those years, there were too many kinds of coin in too many hands. Roman denarii with Tiberius's face on them, the kind Pharisees did not like to handle inside the temple precinct because the emperor's image was a graven thing. Tyrian shekels every pilgrim had to change at the money table to pay the temple tax. The smaller copper lepta the widows carried, Mara had once said a person who knew the sound of one lepton hitting a wooden bowl in an empty courtyard knew more about coin than any merchant ever would. The whole city sounded like an argument among currencies. Community coin was worse. It sounded like someone's soul trying to pass through a hand. People sold things, not everyone, not everything, not all at once. That mattered, Mara said, because foolish men loved turning examples into commands and commands into weapons. But people with houses, fields, extra goods, stored wealth, hidden security, visible security, and the sort of family objects that become arguments when moved, began bringing money to be distributed, according to need. The phrase sounded clean. It was not. Need had faces and accents. Need lied sometimes because shame had taught it to. Need asked whether a widow from one tongue mattered as much as a widow from another. Need made generous people tired and tired people suspicious. Dagon trusted need more than he trusted abundance. Need at least admitted hunger. A man named Joseph came from Cyprus, though most began calling him by a name that meant encouragement because communities love renaming people after what they keep doing. He sold a field and brought the proceeds without making the room endure his greatness. That impressed Dagon. The money was placed before the apostles, not lifted high, not sung over. Peter looked at Joseph, then at the money, then at the people who would eat because land somewhere had become bread here. "Brother," Peter said, only that. Joseph bowed his head as if one word was plenty. Dagon liked him immediately, which made him suspicious. Mara liked him too, which made suspicion harder to defend. "He gives like a man returning something," Mara said later. "You know that from one look." "No, from his shoulders." Shoulders again, bodies confess before mouths. Dagon considered this and thought of every lie he had ever told with his face. The trouble came 2 days later wearing good cloth. Ananias entered with the expression of a man carrying sacrifice and audience at the same time. His wife, Sapphira, was not with him. That was the first thing Mara noticed. Dagon noticed the purse. It was heavy enough to impress, not heavy enough to be all. Dagon hated that he knew this. Old skills do not become holy simply because a man changes rooms. They remain skills. The question is whether they keep serving hunger or learn to serve truth. Ananias placed the purse down. People looked. Of course they did. Generosity attracts eyes. That is one of its dangers. From the sale, Ananias said. Peter looked at him. The room changed. Dagon had seen Peter angry. This was not anger first. It was grief arriving armed. Mara shifted the child to her other hip and moved one step back, not fear of Peter. Fear of what truth was about to cost. Peter asked a question. Dagon would remember the shape more than the exact words. Why had Ananias let deceit fill the place where gift should have been? Was the property not his? Was the money not under his choice? Why lie not merely to men, but to God? The room stopped breathing. An older man near the back, a scribe by his dress and bearing, drew his head into his shoulders the way men do when their training has supplied a reference they would prefer not to have just remembered. Dagon would learn later, from Mara who had grown up with synagogue boys, that the man had been thinking of a Chan at Jericho, a Chan who had kept back a portion of the devoted things, and whom the whole camp had stoned by Joshua's word so the people could go forward without the curse on them. The pattern was the same. One man holding back a piece, and the holding back endangering everyone. The Torah-trained mind in the room had reached for that story before Peter had even finished his question. Ananias tried to answer, or perhaps he did not. His mouth opened. His body failed. He fell. Death entering a room is different from fear entering it. Fear makes people loud or quiet. Death makes them count distance. Dagon moved before he knew what he meant to do. So did others. Too late. Men bent over Ananias. Someone cried out. Someone said his name as if names could pull a soul back if thrown quickly enough. Mara turned the child away. Mary across the room closed her eyes. Peter stood like a man who had not wanted to be right. Young men wrapped the body. That was the part that stayed with Dagon, not the falling, the wrapping, cloth over face. Hands that had expected to carry bread now carrying consequence. Feet shifting around a purse no one wanted to touch. The money remained on the floor. Its sound had ended. For 3 hours the room lived badly. People spoke in fragments. Some left and returned because leaving did not free them from knowing. Some asked whether the money should be moved. No one moved it. A woman began to pray and stopped. Joseph from Cyprus sat with his hands open on his knees, looking at the purse as if generosity itself had been accused and needed defending by silence. Dagon stood in the doorway. Yos came near him. The boy had grown less feral in days and more dangerous in questions. He died because he kept some? Yos whispered, no. Then why? Dagon did not answer quickly. That felt important, because he wanted the honor of giving all while keeping the safety of not giving all. Yos frowned. That seems normal. Yes. The boy looked frightened then. Good, Dagon thought. Not because fear is holy by itself, but because the boy had understood the story had teeth pointed in more than one direction. Could I die for lying? Dagon looked at him. Everyone dies with lies somewhere near them. That is not comforting. No, Mara's voice came from behind them. Try this, tell the truth before it grows teeth. Yos turned. All truth? Mara adjusted the child, who had begun grabbing at her veil. Start with the ones that make someone hungry. Yos thought about this, then nodded like a man accepting terms for battle. Sapphira came later. Dagon wished she had run. That was not noble. It was true. He wished someone had found her, shaken her, warned her, given her the chance to be less bound to her husband's performance than marriage often made women. But she came with no knowledge in her face, or perhaps with knowledge buried deep enough to look like composure. The room saw her and became one wound. Peter asked. She answered the same lie. Dagon shut his eyes. He heard Mara breathe in. He heard Mary whisper something too low for language. He heard the terrible space before consequence repeated itself. When Dagon opened his eyes, Sapphira had fallen. The young men who had buried her husband came in again. Their faces were worse this time. Repeated duty matures horror quickly. Great fear came upon the whole community. That was how people said it later. Dagon thought it was not only fear. Fear was there, yes, heavy, justified, moving through the room like cold water, but also anger, confusion, shame, relief hidden so deeply no one would admit it. Relief that the lie had been found before it became policy. Relief that holiness was not going to let the community become another market where men purchased reputation with partial truth. Mara did not speak for a long time. When she did, it was to Peter. We need a way to give without theater. Every head turned toward her. Dagon felt pride and terror at the same time. Peter looked exhausted enough to listen. Yes, he said, and a way to keep without shame. The room moved at that. Mara held her ground. If keeping what is yours becomes shame, people will lie to look brave. If giving becomes theater, people will perform until the poor become props. If money is counted in corners, suspicion will grow mold. No one spoke. Dagon wanted to applaud, which would have ruined it. Joseph from Cyprus nodded first, then Mary, then Peter. Say more, Peter said. Mara looked annoyed by being asked to continue after already being clear. Dagon loved her painfully in that moment. Women know who is hungry, she said. Servants know what is hidden. Widows know who is ashamed. Men with purses should not be the only ones counting need. A few men disliked this visibly. Good, and gifts, John asked. Counted by more than one, given without speeches unless the giver must explain a restriction, distributed with names known by those who serve, not shouted for those who watch. Dagon looked at the purse still on the floor. And lies? Someone asked. Mara looked at Peter. This was his burden, he answered slowly. Confessed before they become offerings. That settled differently, not enough. Enough to begin. That night Dagon could not sleep. The room where they stayed felt too full, though only his family occupied their corner. The child slept. Mara slept badly. Dagon sat with the carved bird in his hand and thought about the many ways a man can keep back part of the price. Not only money, truth, grief, mercy, names, a road, a wife, a dead friend, a risen Lord. He had wanted the honor of being changed while keeping the safety of his old defenses, the road knife under the cloak, the lie at the door, the wife on the side of the wall where she could be sent away first. That was too close. He hated Ananias for making him see it. He pitied him for the same reason. Mara spoke without opening her eyes. You are thinking loud. I did not know thoughts made sound. Yours drag furniture. He turned the bird under his thumb. Do you think I lie? Yes, that was marriage too. Often, less than before, encouraging, you asked. He waited. She opened her eyes and looked at him through the dim. You lie most when you pretend you are already as free as you want to be. That entered him cleanly, no jagged edge, only truth. And you? He asked. I lie when I call fear wisdom after wisdom has already left the room. They sat with that. The child sighed in sleep. Outside, Jerusalem moved in its night voice. Dagon put the carved bird down between them. Then tomorrow, he said, we tell the truth before it grows teeth. Mara closed her eyes again. Tomorrow we begin. We begin often. Yes, that is annoying.